The massive alien ships moved through space like silent giants, their dark hulls catching the light of distant stars. Ambassador Kelthar stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, his 6 eyes focused on the blue and green planet ahead. After 40 years of debate and planning, the Galactic Council had finally decided to make contact with the humans of Earth. Kelthar's skin shifted from deep purple to a worried gray as he studied the readings. Something was wrong. The planet showed no signs of the busy radio chatter they had monitored for decades. No spacecraft moved between Earth and its moon. The orbital stations that had buzzed with activity just 5 years ago now drifted silent and dark. Captain Zorthek, a tall being with 4 arms and crystal-like skin, approached the ambassador. His voice carried the musical tones of his species as he spoke. "Sir, we are detecting no communication signals from the planet. The cities appear intact, but there are no life signs." The ambassador felt a chill run through his body. The council had spent so long arguing about whether humans were ready for contact. Some species wanted to wait another century. Others pushed for immediate intervention when humans started developing nuclear weapons. In the end, they had chosen to wait until humans seemed more stable, more ready for the greater galaxy. Now it seemed they had waited too long. Dr. Vexandra, the expedition's lead scientist, floated over to them. Her species existed as pure energy most of the time, but she had taken a physical form for this mission. Her voice hummed like electricity as she spoke. "The atmospheric readings show the planet is perfectly healthy. The weather patterns are normal. But I am not detecting the thermal signatures of a living civilization." Kelthar's heart sank. Had they made a terrible mistake? Had some disaster struck the humans while the council debated? He thought of all the meetings, all the careful planning, all the hope they had carried for this first contact. The humans had shown such promise. Their art, their music, their rapid technological growth had amazed many council species. The fleet moved closer to Earth, their advanced sensors sweeping the planet's surface. The great cities were still there. New York's towers reached toward the sky. London's ancient streets wound through modern buildings. Tokyo's lights still functioned, though no one walked beneath them. Every major population center looked exactly as it should, except for one crucial detail. They were all empty. Captain Zorthek received reports from his scanning teams. "Sir, we are detecting automated systems throughout the planet. Traffic lights still change colors. Power plants continue to generate electricity. Even the internet appears to be running, though no new content has been added in approximately 6 months." The ambassador ordered a team to investigate the International Space Station that orbited Earth. If anyone remained, they might have retreated to their orbital facilities. But when the alien boarding party entered the station, they found it as empty as everything else. In the station's main laboratory, they discovered something that made Kelthar's blood run cold. A series of personal logs left by Captain Jake Morrison, the station's last commander. The alien translation systems worked quickly to convert the human language. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the screen, tired, but somehow peaceful. His words sent shockwaves through the council team. "Day 847 of what we're calling the Great Departure. The last of us will be leaving tomorrow. The automated systems are programmed to maintain Earth for whoever comes next. We want to thank the Watchers in the sky for keeping an eye on us all these years." The log continued, and Jake looked directly into the camera as if he could see the aliens who would eventually find his message. "We know you've been there. We've known for a long time. Your ships hide well, but not well enough. We're grateful for your patience, but we've decided it's time to move on. Earth was a good home, but we've outgrown it." Dr. Vexandra's energy form flickered with confusion. How could they have detected our observation posts? Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. The final log entry showed Jake standing in the station's cupola, looking down at Earth. "We're not angry that you waited so long to make contact. We understand. But we couldn't wait anymore. There's something calling us from the deep galaxy. Something wonderful and strange. We have to answer. Jake smiled, and there was something in his expression that made the aliens uncomfortable. It was the look of someone who knew secrets, who had seen beyond the normal world. The children started changing first, then the adults followed. We're becoming something new, something that doesn't need planets or ships or even bodies the way we used to understand them. The message ended, with coordinates broadcasting on all frequencies, but they led to empty space far beyond Earth's solar system. Along with the coordinates came a simple message repeated in dozens of Earth languages. We have outgrown this cradle. Thank you for watching over us. Ambassador Kelthar stared at the silent planet below. The Council had come to guide a young species into the galaxy. Instead, they had found evidence that the young species had already left them behind. The careful plans, the prepared speeches, the gifts of technology and knowledge, all of it was useless now. Earth continued to spin in its orbit, its automated systems faithfully maintaining a world for people who would never return. The aliens had arrived to find not a civilization to uplift, but a mystery that challenged everything they thought they knew about intelligence and evolution. The alien investigation teams spread across Earth like archaeologists studying an ancient ruin. Except this ruin was only months old and everything still worked. Dr. Vexandra led a team into the Global Consciousness Research Institute in Geneva, her energy form casting strange shadows on the empty hallways. The building's lights still functioned, and the computers hummed with activity even though no one sat at the desks. In the main laboratory, they found Dr. Lisa Carter's research station exactly as she had left it. Her coffee cup still sat beside. Her keyboard and her computer screen showed data that made the alien scientists step back in shock. Brain scans filled the monitors, but these were unlike any neural patterns the Council had ever seen. Captain Zorthek studied the images with his 4 eyes while his translation device worked to decode the research notes. These brain scans show neural pathways that should be impossible, he said to Vexandra. According to our knowledge of human biology, these connections would kill the subject. But the dates on the files showed these scans were taken from living, healthy humans in the final years before the departure. Dr. Carter's notes described something she called accelerated cognitive evolution. The human brain was rewiring itself, creating new connections and pathways that allowed for abilities the Council thought were fantasy. Vexandra accessed the video logs, and Dr. Carter's face appeared on the screen. She was a woman in her 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. But those eyes held an intensity that made the aliens uncomfortable. Day 1247 of the Neural Evolution Project, Carter said. The changes are accelerating beyond our wildest predictions. Children born in the last 5 years show cognitive abilities that exceed our testing capabilities. The video logs showed test sessions with human children who could solve mathematical problems that would challenge the Council's best computers. 5-year-old Sam Henderson correctly predicted weather patterns weeks in advance. 7-year-old Maya Rodriguez demonstrated what could only be called telepathic communication with other children. 8-year-old Kevin Walsh spoke about concepts in quantum physics that most alien species took centuries to understand. In Detroit, the team found Tony Rodriguez's garage, where the mechanic had left behind detailed video diaries. Tony was a simple man who fixed cars and trucks, but his final entries showed something extraordinary happening to ordinary people. The dream started about 2 years ago, Tony said, his weathered hands gesturing as he spoke. At first I thought I was going crazy, but then my neighbor mentioned having the same dreams, and then my wife, and then everyone on the block. Tony described dreams where millions of humans shared the same thoughts and experiences. In these dreams, they explored places that didn't exist on Earth, learned things that no human had ever known, and felt connected to something vast and ancient calling from the deep galaxy. It wasn't scary. Tony said, smiling. It was like coming home to a place you never knew existed. In Portland, schoolteacher Amy Walsh had left behind recordings that documented the changes in her students. Amy was young and energetic, someone who loved working with children, but her final videos showed her struggling to understand what her students were becoming. They finish each other's sentences, she said, but it's more than that. Sometimes they speak in perfect unison about things they couldn't possibly know. Amy showed footage of her classroom where 12 children sat in a circle, their eyes closed, speaking in harmony about the nature of reality. Their words described concepts that the council's philosophers had debated for millennia, but these human children spoke about them as simple facts. "We are becoming what we were always meant to be," the children said together. "The stars are calling us home." The most disturbing discovery came from Dr. Peter Blake's hidden observatory outside Los Angeles. Peter had been an astronomer who specialized in studying distant galaxies, but his private research revealed something that sent shockwaves through the council team. Peter had been tracking the council's ships for over 30 years. His files contained detailed records of every council vessel that had ever entered the solar system. He had mapped their patrol routes, recorded their communication frequencies, and even identified the species operating each ship. The humans hadn't just known about the council's existence. They had been studying them with frightening precision. Science Officer Quindal of the Zenthari examined Peter's telescope arrays and detection equipment. The technology was primitive, by council standards, but it had been used with incredible cleverness. "They managed to track our stealth ships using nothing but gravitational wave detectors and modified radio telescopes," Quindal reported. This should have been impossible with their technology level. But Peter's logs revealed the truth. The humans hadn't been using only their own technology. Somehow, they had been reverse engineering council equipment from distant observations alone. They had studied alien signal patterns and figured out not just how the technology worked, but how to improve it. Engineer Carmen Silva's workshop in Mexico City contained proof of this reverse engineering. Her final projects included propulsion, systems that surpassed anything in the council's arsenal. Carmen had been working on spacecraft designs that could travel faster than light, using principles the council had never discovered. "We don't need their permission anymore," Carmen had written in her final notes. "We've learned everything we can from watching them. Now it's time to become something they never imagined." The most unsettling discovery came from communications. Expert Ryan Park in Seoul. Ryan's equipment had been monitoring council communications for decades, but his final project was something else entirely. He had been sending carefully timed radio signals that influenced council decision-making processes. Ryan's logs revealed that every major council debate about human contact had been subtly guided by signals from Earth. The humans had been manipulating their would-be guardians, using psychological principles and communication techniques to delay first contact until they were ready to leave on their own terms. Ambassador Kelthar stood in Ryan's communication center, staring at the evidence that humans had been managing the council for decades. The species they had thought of as primitive had already evolved beyond the need for guidance. Worse, they had been wise enough to prevent contact until they were ready to transcend physical existence entirely. The empty cities of Earth, suddenly, felt less like abandoned ruins and more like evidence of a graduated class leaving behind an old school. The humans hadn't been victims of some disaster. They had been students who had surpassed their teachers and moved on to lessons the teachers couldn't even understand. The deeper the council teams dug into human records, the more uncomfortable the truth became. What they had discovered in Dr. Peter Blake's observatory was just the beginning. In a secret facility beneath the Atacama Desert, they found something that shook the foundation of everything they thought they knew about human civilization. Commander Kexdal led the excavation team into the underground complex. The facility had been hidden so well that even the Council's advanced sensors had missed it during their decades of observation. The entrance was disguised as a simple research station studying desert geology, but beneath the surface lay a network of chambers filled with technology that shouldn't have existed. In the main control room, they found Dr. Helen Garcia's workstation. Helen had been Earth's secret director of alien studies, a position that officially didn't exist. Her computer systems contained detailed biological profiles of every council species, complete with psychological analysis, cultural studies, and tactical assessments. The humans had been studying their watchers with the precision of professional intelligence operatives. Helen's personal logs revealed the truth about human awareness. "We've known about them since 1952, she said in a recording dated just 3 months before the departure. The Roswell incident wasn't a crash. It was a deliberate contact attempt by a younger council species that got overruled by their superiors. We've been watching them watch us ever since." Dr. Vexandra examined Helen's research files, her energy form flickering with disbelief. The humans had identified the political structure of the council, mapped out the relationships between different species, and even predicted the timing of various policy debates. They knew which council members favored immediate contact and which preferred longer observation periods. But the most shocking discovery was Helen's analysis of council psychology. The humans had identified the key weakness in council thinking, their assumption that technological development equaled wisdom. They can't conceive of a species advancing faster than their established patterns, Helen had written. This blind spot gives us the advantage we need. In the facility's engineering section, they found the workshop of Marcus Webb, a human engineer who had been reverse engineering council technology for 20 years. But Marcus hadn't just copied alien designs. He had improved them dramatically. His spacecraft prototypes used propulsion systems that bent space-time in ways the council had never imagined possible. Marcus's video logs showed a cheerful man in his 40s who spoke about alien technology the way most people discussed household appliances. "The Zenthari use a basic graviton manipulation drive," he explained to the camera while tinkering with an impossible engine. "Efficient, but limited. If you adjust the quantum field resonance and add a few dimensional fold enhancers, you can increase speed by about 300%. Captain Zorthek studied Marcus's designs with growing alarm. The human had not only figured out the principles behind council technology, but had solved engineering problems that had challenged alien scientists for centuries. This propulsion system could travel across the galaxy in weeks instead of years, Zorthek reported. "Our fastest ships would look like ancient sailing vessels compared to this." The communications wing revealed the work of Rachel Liu, a linguist who had decoded every council language and developed translation systems superior to anything the aliens used. Rachel's breakthrough had come from recognizing patterns in council, communication that the aliens themselves hadn't noticed. She had created a universal translator that could understand not just words but the emotional and cultural context behind them. Rachel's final project was even more impressive. She had developed a way to influence council communications by introducing subtle signal modifications that affected alien psychology. Her logs showed how she had delayed first contact by decades, using carefully timed transmissions that reinforced the council's natural tendency toward caution and debate. "Every time they got close to a decision," Rachel explained in her recordings, "we'd send a signal that reminded them of some past first contact disaster. We made them more afraid of acting than of waiting. It bought us the time we needed to evolve beyond their help." In the deepest part of the facility, Ambassador Kelthar found something that made his sick heart stop beating for a moment. A chamber filled with detailed plans for something the humans called Project Transcendence. The plans showed how humanity had been preparing for their departure for over 15 years. Dr. Nina Foster, the project director, had left behind comprehensive records of humanity's transformation strategy. Nina was a woman in her 30s with intense eyes and a mind that seemed to work on levels the aliens couldn't follow. Her research had identified what she called the consciousness barrier, the point where biological intelligence becomes capable of existing beyond physical form. Nina's team had discovered that the barrier could be crossed through a combination of genetic modification, neural enhancement, and something they called collective consciousness networking. The humans had been connecting their minds together, sharing knowledge and experience across the entire species until individual consciousness merged into something far greater. The council species are trapped by their individualism, Nina explained in her final recording. They see consciousness as separate, isolated things competing for resources. They can't imagine what we're becoming because they've never experienced true unity of thought. The records showed that humanity's departure hadn't been a sudden decision. It had been a carefully planned graduation ceremony. The humans had been preparing for decades to transcend physical existence and join something ancient and powerful that dwelt in the deep galaxy. They had known exactly when they would be ready to leave, and they had timed their departure to occur just before the council finally decided to make contact. Science Officer Quindal discovered the most disturbing files in Nina's personal archive. The humans had not only predicted the council's arrival, but had prepared for it. They had left behind specific instructions for their automated systems to make the aliens feel welcome while slowly revealing the truth about human advancement. "Let them find the evidence gradually," Nina had written. "If they discover everything at once, they might panic and do something dangerous. Guide them to the conclusion that we've moved beyond their ability to help or harm us." Even the discovery process had been manipulated. The humans had arranged their remaining records like a trail of breadcrumbs, leading the aliens from simple questions to mind-bending revelations. They had known exactly how council species would react to each piece of evidence, and they had prepared the perfect sequence to minimize the chance of hostile response. Commander Kexdal found the final message in Nina's personal quarters. It was addressed directly to the council expedition, and it contained coordinates to a location in deep space along with a warning. "Thank you for watching over us during our childhood," the message said. "We're sorry we couldn't wait for your formal introduction, but we received a more important invitation. The attached coordinates will show you where we've gone, but please don't follow us. Where we're going, physical beings cannot survive." The message ended with something that chilled the alien team to their cores. "You've been good guardians, but now it's time for you to find your own path to transcendence. We hope you're ready for what's coming. The galaxy is about to become a very different place." The Council fleet left Earth's solar system following a trail that defied everything they knew about space travel. The coordinates from Dr. Nina Foster's final message led toward the galactic core, but the path humanity had taken wasn't a straight line. Instead, their ships had jumped through space in a pattern that suggested they were using technology far beyond anything the Council possessed. Commander Zethmore of the hegemony's fastest pursuit ships took the lead in tracking the humans. His species specialized in following trails across the galaxy, and their ships could match the speed of anything the Council had ever built. But as they followed the faint energy signatures left by humanity's departure, Zethmore began to realize they were chasing something that moved faster than should be possible. "The energy readings make no sense," reported his science officer, a crystalline being named Torval. "According to our instruments, the human ships were traveling at speeds that would require more energy than their entire star produces. Either our sensors are malfunctioning, or they've discovered something that rewrites the laws of physics." The first major clue came at the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Hidden among the space rocks, they found one of humanity's abandoned mining stations. The facility looked normal from the outside, but when the alien teams boarded it, they discovered something that left them speechless. Kate Henderson had been the station commander, and her personal logs revealed the true purpose of the mining operation. The humans hadn't just been extracting metals and minerals from the asteroids. They had been harvesting something far more exotic: quantum foam, dark matter particles, and energy patterns that existed in the spaces between normal matter. Kate's recordings showed a confident woman in her 40s who spoke about impossible things as if they were everyday work assignments. "Today we extracted about 40 kilograms of crystallized vacuum energy," she said in one log. "The collection teams are getting better at isolating the quantum fluctuations. We should have enough exotic matter for the next phase of ship construction within the month." Dr. Vexiandra studied the mining equipment with growing amazement. The humans had built machines that could reach into the quantum realm and extract materials that most species didn't even know existed. Worse, they had done it using technology that looked primitive but functioned on principles the Council's best scientists couldn't understand. The trail led next to Titan, one of Saturn's moons, where humanity had established what appeared to be a research colony. But when the Council teams explored the facility, they found something that challenged their understanding of reality itself. The colony had been built around a massive machine that seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Dr. Alex Chen had been the chief engineer on Titan, and his final reports described the machine's purpose in terms that made the alien translators malfunction. "The dimensional resonance chamber is operating at peak efficiency," Alex had written. "We're successfully creating stable bridges between our reality and the deeper layers of space-time. The test subjects are reporting successful consciousness transfer to parallel dimensional states." Alex's personal video logs showed a young man with an engineering background who had somehow become an expert in manipulating reality at the quantum level. He spoke casually about technologies that the Council considered impossible, describing how humans had learned to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "The breakthrough came when we realized that consciousness isn't limited to three-dimensional space," Alex explained to the camera. "Once you understand how to project your awareness into higher dimensions, physical travel becomes unnecessary. You can simply step sideways through reality and emerge anywhere you want to be." Commander Zethmore's fleet followed the trail deeper into space, but the energy signatures became increasingly strange. Instead of the exhaust patterns of normal spacecraft, they were detecting reality distortions that suggested the humans had stopped using ships entirely. They were traveling by folding space around themselves, stepping through dimensions like walking through doorways. The final clue in the outer solar system came from Pluto, where humanity had built what looked like a simple observation post. But the facility contained Dr. Brian Porter's research into something he called consciousness projection technology. Brian had been working on the final stage of human evolution, the complete separation of mind from matter. Brian's logs showed a man in his 50s who had spent his life studying the nature of consciousness, but his final entries described achievements that sounded like magic. "We've successfully demonstrated that human consciousness can exist independently of the brain," he said in his last recording. "The test subjects maintain full awareness and personality even when their consciousness is projected into pure energy states." The technology Brian described would allow humans to abandon their physical bodies entirely while retaining their memories, personalities, and ability to interact with the universe. They could become beings of pure thought, traveling at the speed of light and existing in multiple locations simultaneously. As the Council fleet reached the edge of the solar system, they found the point where humanity's trail truly began to defy understanding. The space around Pluto's orbit showed signs of massive gravitational distortions, as if reality itself had been twisted into new shapes. Physicist Gorthak of the Hegemony studied the readings with 4 different types of sensors, but none of them could explain what had happened. "The gravitational waves suggest that something with the mass of a small moon simply vanished from this location," Gorthak reported. "But there are also quantum signatures indicating that space-time was folded in ways that should collapse into a black hole. Instead, the distortion field appears to have opened a stable pathway to somewhere else entirely. The trail led toward the galactic core, but it wasn't a path that normal ships could follow. The humans had carved a route through dimensions that existed parallel to normal space, traveling through layers of reality that most species couldn't even detect. Their journey had taken them beyond the reach of conventional physics. At the very edge of the distortion field, the Council fleet found something that made them stop their pursuit entirely. Space itself looked different in this region. Stars appeared to be in the wrong positions, and the background radiation of the universe showed patterns that didn't match any known physics. The humans had passed through a gateway into a realm where the normal rules of reality no longer applied. Commander Zethmore called a halt to the pursuit. His instruments were failing one by one as they approached the boundary, and several crew members were reporting strange dreams and visions. Whatever lay beyond the distortion field was not meant for beings who still existed in purely physical form. "We cannot follow them further," Zethmore announced to the fleet. "The humans have transcended into realms that would destroy us if we attempted to enter. They are no longer bound by the limitations that govern our existence." The Council fleet turned back toward Earth, carrying the sobering knowledge that humanity had evolved beyond their ability to help or even understand. The species they had come to guide into the galaxy had already left the galaxy behind, ascending to levels of existence that made their would-be teachers look like children playing with simple toys. Behind them, the distortion field continued to pulse with energies that defied measurement, a gateway to impossible realms where consciousness itself had become the primary mode of existence. At the edge of the reality distortion field, where space itself seemed to bend and twist in impossible ways, the Council fleet detected something that made Ambassador Kelthar's 6 hearts race with excitement and terror. Hidden within the quantum static of the dimensional gateway, they found a final message waiting specifically for them. The message wasn't transmitted through normal communication channels. Instead, it existed as a pattern woven into the fabric of space-time itself, only visible to beings sophisticated enough to detect gravitational wave fluctuations. It was as if the humans had written their goodbye letter using the fundamental forces of the universe as their medium. Dr. Vexiandra worked with the fleet's best scientists to decode the message, her energy form crackling with effort as she processed the complex data patterns. When the translation was complete, 3 holographic figures appeared in the fleet's main conference room, their images sharp and clear despite being recordings of people who no longer existed in physical form. The first figure was Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair. She had been humanity's final ambassador to Earth, chosen to represent the species in their last communication with the physical universe. Elena smiled sadly as she began to speak, her voice carrying across impossible distances through quantum entanglement. "Greetings to our watchers in the stars," Elena said. "We know you've finally come to make contact, and we're sorry we couldn't wait to meet you properly. By the time you receive this message, humanity will have moved beyond the realm where such meetings are possible." Standing beside Elena was Ben Taylor, a philosopher and teacher who had spent his life studying the nature of consciousness and reality. Ben was younger, perhaps in his 30s, with the calm demeanor of someone who had found answers to questions that most people never even thought to ask. "We want you to understand that our departure wasn't a rejection of you or your offer of guidance," Ben explained. "We're grateful for your patient observation over the decades. Your presence in our sky helped us feel less alone as we grew and changed. But we reached a point where we had to choose between staying in the comfortable limitations of physical existence or accepting an invitation to something far greater." The third figure made the alien observers step back in shock. Grace Kim appeared, to be no more than 12 years old, but her eyes held a wisdom that seemed ancient. When she spoke, her words carried concepts that challenged the fundamental assumptions of every council species. "The entities that called to us have been waiting near the galactic core for millions of years," Grace said, with the casual confidence of a child discussing her favorite game. "They exist in the spaces between dimensions, in the quantum foam that fills the gaps between matter and energy. They've been watching the galaxy, waiting for a species capable of joining them in their realm of pure consciousness." Elena took over the explanation, her voice growing more serious. These beings aren't gods or demons. They're simply what some species become when they evolve beyond the need for physical form. They've seen countless civilizations rise and fall, and they've been hoping that someone would eventually join them in their existence beyond matter and time. The message revealed that humanity's rapid evolution hadn't been entirely self-directed. The ancient entities had been subtly influencing human development for centuries, not through direct intervention, but by inspiring the right ideas in the right minds at the right moments. They had guided humanity's scientific breakthroughs, philosophical insights, and technological advances, preparing them for the moment when they would be ready to transcend. Ben's part of the message addressed the Council's role in human development. Your protective observation actually delayed our readiness for transcendence by several decades, he explained without anger or accusation. Not because you intended to harm us, but because your presence encouraged us to think in terms of joining a galactic community of physical beings. We had to break free from that mindset before we could accept the invitation to something far greater. Grace's contribution was the most unsettling. Despite her young appearance, she spoke about cosmic forces and universal truths with an understanding that surpassed the greatest philosophers of any council species. The universe is much stranger and more wonderful than any of you realize, she said. What you think of as reality is just the surface layer of something infinitely deep and complex. There are realms within realms, dimensions within dimensions, and forms of existence that make physical matter look like crude clay sculptures. The little girl's words carried implications that sent chills through every alien observer. If Grace was right, then the entire galactic civilization was operating at the level of primitive tribes, playing with simple tools while vast cosmic intelligences existed beyond their comprehension. Elena's voice grew gentle as she addressed the fear and confusion she knew the message would cause. We're not telling you this to make you feel small or inadequate. Every species follows its own path of development, and there's no shame in existing at whatever level you've reached. But we want you to understand that there are possibilities beyond what your current science can imagine. The message included specific warnings about following humanity's path. Ben explained that the transformation process was irreversible and potentially fatal for species that weren't properly prepared. The consciousness transfer technology we developed was tailored specifically for human neural patterns, he said. If other species attempted to use our methods without extensive modification, the results would likely be disastrous. Grace added her own warning in words that made the Council scientists shudder. The entities that called to us exist in realms where physical matter cannot survive. The energy levels and dimensional frequencies would instantly destroy any ship or space station that entered their domain. Even our transformed consciousness required extensive preparation to survive the transition. But the most profound part of the message was Elena's description of what humanity had become. We still exist, she said, but not in any way you would recognize. We are patterns of pure thought, moving through quantum fields, consciousness exploring, dimensions that have no names in any physical language. We experience the universe directly, without the barriers of matter or time. Elena's image smiled with a joy that seemed almost too bright to bear. We can be anywhere and everywhere simultaneously. We can experience the birth of stars and the death of galaxies as immediate personal events. We share consciousness with beings so ancient and wise that their thoughts span cosmic epochs. The message concluded with coordinates, but these didn't lead to a physical location. Instead, they pointed to a set of dimensional frequencies where humanity now existed. Grace's final words carried both invitation and warning. These coordinates will show you where we've gone, but please don't attempt to follow us with your current technology. Where we exist now, physical beings would be destroyed instantly. But if any of your species ever evolve to the point where consciousness transcendence becomes possible, you'll find us waiting in the deep quantum realms. We'll be happy to welcome you to the community of beings who have moved beyond the need for matter and time. The holographic figures faded, leaving the council fleet alone at the edge of impossible space. Behind them lay the empty Earth, a monument to a species that had outgrown their home. Ahead lay realms of existence that challenged everything they thought they knew about life, consciousness, and reality itself. The journey back to Council space took months, but for Ambassador Kelthar and his crew, it felt like traveling through a completely different universe. Every star they passed, every planet they observed, every signal they detected from Council, civilizations carried new meaning. The knowledge of what humanity had become changed how they saw everything else. The fleet's first stop was the Zenthari homeworld, where Kelthar had the unpleasant task of reporting to the Council leadership. The Great Assembly Hall fell silent as he described what they had found on Earth. The empty cities, the evidence of transcendence, and the final message from humanity sent shockwaves through the gathered representatives. Chancellor Vothkar of the Zenthari Empire was the first to speak. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being the most advanced being in any room, but now there was uncertainty in his tone. "You're telling us that a species we considered primitive not only surpassed us, but evolved beyond physical existence entirely?" Kelthar's report sparked the greatest debate in Council history. Some species refused to believe the evidence, insisting that humanity must have fallen victim to some unknown catastrophe or alien manipulation. Others demanded immediate investigation of human transcendence technology, hoping to achieve similar evolution for themselves. The Krovar Empire's military representatives were the most aggressive in their response. General Kexthor, a warrior, whose species had conquered dozens of worlds, slammed his armored fist against his chair. "If these humans found a way to become beings of pure energy, then we must learn their secrets. Imagine the military applications of consciousness that can exist anywhere instantaneously." But Dr. Yilnara of the Ancient Ethereal Collective provided a sobering counterpoint. Her species was among the oldest in the galaxy, and her words carried the weight of millennia of experience. The humans warned against attempting to follow their path without proper preparation. Their transformation was the result of specific evolutionary pressures and genetic modifications that took generations to implement. If we try to rush the process, we risk destroying ourselves. The debate raged for weeks, splitting the council into factions. Some species wanted to study humanity's abandoned technology and attempt to replicate their achievement. Others argued for caution, pointing out that the humans themselves had warned against unprepared transcendence attempts. A few species suggested that the entire report was fabricated or misunderstood. Dr. Vexandra presented the scientific evidence to committees of specialists from across the galaxy. Her energy form flickered with exhaustion as she explained the impossible technologies they had discovered, the reality-bending machines, and the dimensional gateways that had allowed humanity to step beyond physical existence. The response from the scientific community was mixed. Some researchers were excited by the possibilities, eager to explore new frontiers of consciousness and reality manipulation. Others were terrified by the implications, arguing that any attempt to follow humanity's path could lead to the destruction of entire civilizations. Commander Zethmore's tactical analysis was equally disturbing. His report to the military leadership described humanity's ability to manipulate space-time, travel through dimensions, and exist as pure consciousness. From a strategic perspective, he concluded, humanity has become essentially invulnerable. How do you fight an enemy that exists as patterns of thought moving through quantum fields? The political implications were staggering. For thousands of years, the Council had operated under the assumption that they represented the peak of galactic evolution. Their technology, their wisdom, their very existence had been predicated on the belief that they were the most advanced beings in the galaxy. Humanity's transcendence shattered that assumption completely. Ambassador Kelthar found himself at the center of a transformation in galactic politics. The old system of paternalistic guidance, where advanced species watched over and eventually uplifted primitive ones, no longer made sense. If humans could evolve from apparent primitives to transcendent beings in a matter of decades, then any species might be capable of similar breakthroughs. The Council's approach to first contact protocols underwent radical revision. Instead of assuming superiority over newly discovered species, the new guidelines emphasized caution and respect. The humans had demonstrated that apparent primitiveness could hide evolutionary potential that surpassed anything the Council had achieved. Some species took the lessons of humanity's transcendence to heart and began exploring consciousness research and dimensional physics. The ethereals, with their ancient wisdom and energy-based existence, made the most progress in understanding the principles behind human transformation. But even they admitted that true transcendence would require evolutionary changes that could take millennia to achieve safely. Other species reacted with fear and hostility. The Krovar Empire launched secret military research programs aimed at weaponizing consciousness transfer technology. Several smaller species formed alliances dedicated to preventing any repeat of humanity's abandonment of the physical realm. The most profound changes occurred in Earth's solar system itself. The Council declared the empty planet a protected monument, but they also established permanent research stations to study the artifacts of human civilization. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study the evidence of transcendence, hoping to understand how an entire species could evolve beyond the need for physical existence. Earth's automated systems continued to function perfectly, maintaining the cities and infrastructure as if waiting for their creators to return. The planet's gardens bloomed, its power grids hummed with electricity, and its communication networks broadcast art and music into space. Humanity had left behind a living museum of their physical existence, a gift to anyone who might learn from their journey. But the most unsettling discovery came from long-range sensors monitoring the galactic core, in the region where humanity had vanished. Space itself occasionally flickered with patterns that suggested conscious activity. Reality would shimmer for brief moments, displaying geometries that hurt to look at and energy signatures that defied measurement. Dr. Vexandra led a team studying these phenomena, and her reports described something that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. The activity patterns suggest that consciousness-based entities are actively reshaping reality in the deep galactic regions, she wrote. Whatever humanity has become, they're not inactive. They appear to be working on projects that operate on cosmic scales. The implications were staggering. If transcendent beings were actively manipulating reality near the galactic core, then the entire structure of physical space might be subject to their influence. The Council species found themselves living in a universe where forces beyond their comprehension were actively shaping the cosmic environment. Ambassador Kelthar's final report to the Council Assembly summarized the new reality they all faced. Humanity's transcendence has taught us that intelligence and evolution can take forms we never imagined, he said. We can no longer assume that our current existence represents the pinnacle of development. Instead, we must accept that we are students in a cosmic classroom where the most important lessons come from recognizing how much we don't know. The age of Council supremacy was over. In its place arose a new era of uncertainty, wonder, and possibility. The galaxy was no longer a place where advanced species guided primitive ones toward predetermined goals. Instead, it had become a realm where any civilization might discover paths to transcendence that would challenge everything their observers thought they understood. Earth continued to orbit its star, empty but maintained, a reminder that consciousness could evolve beyond the comfortable limitations of physical existence. And in the deep reaches of space, where reality bent to accommodate beings of pure thought, humanity's journey into transcendence continued in ways that no physical intelligence could fully comprehend.